Okay, everybody, welcome to the September 17th, 2024 Ways and Means / Board of Assessors meeting, joint meeting. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:03. This meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee. If any other person present are doing the same, you must notify this guy at this time. See anybody? So, do a roll call of members. Hey, Councillor Chauncey, are you here? Yep, I'm here. Councillor Garrett.
I'm here.
Councillor Master-Sotero.
Here.
Councillor Perry.
Here.
Councillor Wondolowski. I don't see her at the moment, but we'll give her a minute. We got approval of minutes from August 20th, 2024. Do you have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
All right.
Yeah.
Two. You guys have any discussion about that? Anyone? Anyone? No. All right, all those in favor approve the minutes as they are. I guess we have to do a roll call.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Perry, let's start with you.
Yes. Aye.
Councillor Mastrotero.
Yep.
Councillor Garrett.
Yes.
I got no problem with it. Councillor Wondolowski's still not here, so. Next. Public comment. You'd like to, you want to come and just throw your name and address down on here and then join us at the table, you can have the floor.
Thanks.
See.
Hi, yeah. I'm Sarah Brown. I'm at 112 Stone Farm Lane. And I'm here because I'm interested and also because I submitted my name for Greenfield City Councilor at Large. And I'm just curious to learn more and be here and listen in.
Cool.
So,
Welcome. Is there anything you would like other than that to use for your time in public comment? Anything you want to put out
no,
there?
I'm
Okay.
just
All
hi.
right. Cool. And anybody online? Next.
Stephanie always has something to say.
Ian Chapman.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hello, Steph.
Hello, I missed the meeting this morning because I had a funeral, so I'm just gonna listen in. Thanks.
All right.
Sorry, Stephanie.
All right, so we're all set. Public comment. There are no public hearings. First motion to talk about is the approval of the memorandum of understanding between the Greenfield Police Department and the Franklin County Sheriff's Office and Mass Cop Local 470. Thought this was relatively straightforward. I didn't know if anybody had any questions or.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. Cool.
I do have one question. Do we
Yeah.
need to move it first or can I just ask? I'm all for this. It makes a ton of sense. I just don't actually, I realized I didn't know how the sheriff's department gets its funding. It's a county thing. So does the state just fund it? Is that how it works?
I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure it's all state funded. Hey, Mayor's on board. Do you know that answer or no? Is that outside of Greenfield? So I believe it's all state funded, right?
I believe so, but I'm actually not going to say because
Okay.
that hadn't occurred to me where they get their funding from.
That's fair
It
enough.
isn't through us. It isn't through the city.
It isn't through the state, right?
Yeah, that would be what made sense. I was curious.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I probably should take a motion on this. Well, I moved it, so does anyone want to second that?
Second.
There you go. Just in time. You don't even know what you're seconding. You
I
guys.
believe in you guys.
All right, well, it was the approval of the MOU for the Sheriff's Office, Greenfield Police, Mass Cop Local. Did you have any concerns, questions about that?
I did not. It seemed very straightforward. I'm not sure why we have to sign it, but
Money moves, I guess.
Not in financial order, but still
I get it.
red tape. All right. All right, all those in favor?
Roll call.
Aye.
Roll call, you're right.
Oh, wait.
Damn you. Councillor Perry.
We're glad to see you.
Councillor Perry, we're taking your vote here.
Aye. Yes.
Okay, Councillor Wondolowski.
Aye.
Council Mastroserro.
Yep.
Council Garrett.
Yep.
And I'm saying yeah as well. All right, and the next portion is why this is a joint meeting. We have more discussion with the Board of Assessors, who looks like we have all three of you here in one shape or another, to discuss split tax rate, kind of continuing this from our last meeting. And any other insights you guys have come up with or brought with you to go over that. And I'll leave it to, hello, Anthony. However you guys want to do your portion here, discussion. I don't know if you've hashed it out ahead of time.
Well, if I may,
Yeah.
Randy had asked me to remind him, I saw him this morning, remind him what our questions were last week. And they're in the minutes.
Right.
So, you want to like one at a time?
Sure.
Like some of them we answered.
Okay.
There is.
So good to know.
Randy, maybe you want to unmute so you can weigh in on stuff? Oh, there you are.
Oh,
Well, there you are.
Come and gone.
That is the nature of.
There you are.
We have it now.
Okay,
Don't touch anything.
Right. So, yeah, I was asking for input because I wanted to make sure I was answering all of the questions that you had. But some of the questions that I got from Michael were more assessing questions than classification and residential exemption or the affordable housing exemption and some of the things that we're concentrating on. So we can talk about those and get back to you with additional information. But we kind of, I think, Jim, did you have an updated PowerPoint or the presentations that we had from this morning? This morning's meeting that we were basically reiterating what we spoke about the previous week.
well, I have the two PowerPoints that I sent to you. One was the one we used previously, and the other one was the 10-year look backs.
Right, I guess I could pull those up if you wanted to enable me to
Yeah,
do a screen share.
yeah, why don't you drive?
And Mike.
hold on. Hold on. No,
No
that's not it.
problem. I'm
You
trying to
showed
find
me.
the right.
Showed me how to do this. And I already forgot.
If I help you, will that,
John,
improve
will
your
you-
perception of us?
Oh, but I appreciate the help nonetheless.
You couldn't go any higher.
Oh. Buttering me up works every time.
I forgot already.
Let's go to participants
And I didn't.
and then
I'll
Randy,
click on him directly.
and then
That's
make
what
him
I
a
did.
co-host and then share.
Perfect.
Which he should be a co-host.
I made it 3/4 of the way.
Yeah.
I got not, I shaped forget again. All right, Randy, you, I think you have access now.
Right. And so, Jim, this is your slide,
Yeah,
I think, for your 10-year comparison. Because that was one of the things that was asked about at the last meeting, is for just a longer look back, a comparison of how things have gone for the last 10 years. And so this is something that Jim had come up with. It's showing the mix of real estate. We have RO and CIP mix, which stands for real estate, residential and open space. And the CIP is commercial, industrial, and personal property. So it's basically showing that mix of value and the percentage, and it's pretty much remained consistent, throughout the entire time. Then this was a comparison for the tax rates and where the tax rate has gone over the last 10 years to get us to our current rate. And then the assessed values with a color-coded residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property.
And Randy, is it correct that the tax rates, in 23 and 24 that are so low is because the valuations went up significantly?
Right, that was the big jump that we saw between 22 and 23, where I raised the average single family value by 16.5%. And our budget stayed basically level funded 37,200,000. Then in the following year, it was 37,700,000. But I raised that value so much that it pushed the tax rate down $2.67 to 1965 from 2232. And then while Jim was working on that, I was basically working on the same thing, but I have all of the statistics. So here's our tax rate. This is our residential levy, the commercial levy, industrial and personal property, our total levy, and then that mix of where the percentages were of residential versus the commercial, industrial, and personal property.
This is the tabular form, the table form of the graphs that you just saw.
Right.
Right. I also have this. I think I need to reduce this a little. Is that reduced too much? Can you still see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so then that's showing, our levy, the levy or the percentage of the levy. This is the dollar amount of each of those years of those particular classes, which made up our total, and then the same type of thing. So this is additional research or information that I did on a 10-year look back. And then also we had one of the counselors, this other information right here. This has to do with the residential exemption. And so one of the counselors is asking for what is the percentage that are over or under that break even point, which in our last presentation was the 2000 or 277,100. And so out of the five, and I think when I did this, unfortunately, I didn't include mixed use properties because I think my other number was 5,906 total residential properties. And this, I did it off of 300 or 5302, but the total number that was under the that break even point of 277,000 was 65%. And then what was over was this number and was actually basically 35%. So it's basically 2/3 would see the benefit with that residential exemption, but the burden would be placed on that other third. And so that was one of the other things that had been mentioned, and it was sort of illustrates one of the points that we were trying to make or observations about that residential exemption is that it's more appropriate for towns or places that have, resort places, like I had mentioned the Lenox or the Cape, Truro, Falmouth and or Weymouth and those type of places that have, a great draw for tourism and have homes that are owned by people that don't live there. And we do have some properties that are owned by people that don't live here, but they're people that, investment people that have own, multifamily properties. And so with the residential exemption, it would place more of a burden on those people, which would give us the opposite of what we're looking for. We're trying to have things be more affordable for people. And if we did that, then those landlords would be raising the rent, or we would anticipate that they would be raising the rent. And that is why we feel it's really not gonna perform the service that we were hoping that it would when we were initially looking at it. And that, and also combined with the affordable exemption too. Now let me see if I can pull that up, because Chuck had shared that slide with me earlier today.
Yeah, and there, so again, what Randy just said, actually the property owners that are hit most by a residential exemption are the non-owner occupied. And so that's why we're concerned that that would lead to a significant rise in rents for a lot of the people in Greenfield, which we're thinking is not a direction you want to go. And there is this affordable housing, which is the last slide in this deck. There's this affordable housing thing, but it too has a lot of restrictions, and including again, we think that this is going to increase rent. So again, I think that one of the things that maybe you guys want least is for rents to go up.
All right, so did you want me to go over some of the other questions that you had from that agenda that you sent to me, Michael? So for instance, the process for public participation and ability for the public to ask questions regarding tax rates and property valuations.
That was one of the questions we asked, yeah.
Yeah, okay, and so that's something that the public is going to have the opportunity to interact with the board at a few of the things that we're going to be putting on. They have the option to talk to Jim or Chuck either at the library or at the senior center, and appointments can be made with them. I think the last Thursday I know it was Chuck's at I think
Last Tuesday for me.
last Tuesday. Okay,
Next Tuesday as it happens.
And
When's
then,
yours, Jim?
Last Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Second Tuesday? Yeah, so every other Tuesday you can get with one of us.
Yeah.
and we're
And where
doing
is
some
that
outreach.
listed? Well, just so we can share that with the public.
So mine at the senior center is in the senior center newsletter. So they advertise that every month
So that's you're the last Tuesday, and that's at the JZ or the library?
at the JZ. And so they let me take 2 appointments a month there. And Jim, you're at the library, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The second Tuesday of the month?
Yeah, I'm just confirming that because
Oh, mine's are at 1 and 1:30.
I think that's,
I've been
Yeah.
doing it for several months.
yeah.
And we're
I
also
just,
planning on putting on an Ask the Assessor night. It's something that we're gonna do at, the John Zahn Center. We were hoping to get it done this month, but we're running a little behind, and probably the beginning of October is we're gonna have it. It'll be something in the evening at 6:30. Part of why I don't want to rush it and want to give plenty of time for the public to be aware so that they can attend if they want. And so we're trying to shoot for a couple weeks out from now, and we'll be
You can
choosing
post
that
that on
date and
this.
getting it publicized.
You can post that on the city website, perhaps?
Yeah, it'll
Yeah,
get
we-
posted on the city website.
And that, I know yours is as well, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we just worked with Matt today, Matt Conway from the mayor's office, and we are redesigning our web pages.
That'd be great to have it on your web.
Yeah, so we're surfacing some of these items. We're also the primary thing that I do in these sessions is I help people find their property record card. Because the very first thing we want to do is make sure that the record card's accurate. If it's inflated, for example, then they can talk to us, and if we fix it, then their taxes would go down. So that's the primary thing we do. The other thing that just helps people understand, how a lot of people are concerned, like I'm paying more than my neighbor. So it's all public information. So you can look at your neighbor's card and your card. And as long as they're both accurate, then you know that nobody's paying more or less than they should be. The other
Or
thing
you'll
that we
see
do,
the difference.
or you can see the
you'll see-
difference.
Yeah,
Where
if they
would
have more
people
square
find that
footage or.
information? So I can share that with.
So again, right now it's several levels deep, but with the redesign, it'll be at the top.
Okay.
And the other thing that that people, and this is, I think, relevant to this meeting. So people are like, okay, my value is whatever, but what does that mean? Why are my taxes higher?
Right.
And then we explain this equation that we've all been talking about here, and basically we blame you guys. And we say the reason your taxes are higher is not because your valuation went up. It's because the the city spent more.
Which is true.
So that's,
As it will always be.
yeah, so that's the primary thing that that I've been doing in these sessions. The other thing that I get to do is we advertise individual exemptions. And that's, again, we're going to be bringing that higher level on the website, making those forms easier, although anyone can go to the assessor's office and get the exemption forms. We want as many people to do those exemptions as we can. And at a future meeting, we want to talk to you guys about increasing some of those exemptions, either increasing, the state allows certain options for cities. And for some of them, you might be able to increase the amount of the exemption. For some of them, you might be able to lower the requirements. So you could have a little higher income or lower age or something. And then there's another one, which I think you guys might be very interested in, is there are some provisions that allow people to defer some of their taxes. And in particular, for seniors, you can actually defer year to year to year, all the way until your house gets sold. Up to 50% of the value of your house, which, as we know, the house values are very high. And so for some seniors in certain situations, that can effectively make it so they don't have to pay property taxes for potentially the rest of their years.
Actually, that's not 100% accurate. I'm sorry to interrupt, Chuck, but that was part of what I saw in that IGR. And one of the things about our hardship policy that I had was looking for this information in the reference to a 3-year time frame. So I don't think it's something indefinite, although that's what we're going to be looking at. Pardon me?
That's the 18A, not the 41A. But
okay, 41A. Okay, and so I sent the other. Well, I didn't look at that, and so then I am corrected. I'm wrong, and I promptly admit it.
But in any case, the thing
Thanks
that we
for that
want to
clarification.
sorry, Randy. The thing that we want to come to you about is right now we have that at an 8% interest rate. And the state allows us to lower that as far as 3%. So
the delay.
right, every year, and it compounds. So like if a senior, let's say a senior's in a home which is valued at $300,000, which, as you know, a lot of our homes are getting valued that high now. So, you know, they're paying, you know, whatever, $6,000 in taxes every year. Well, if the interest rate is only 3%, that's a lot more years, right, that they could be deferring. And then when the house finally does get sold, so up to 150,000 could be used to pay back those taxes. So that's a lot of years, a lot more years at 3% than it is 8%. Now, right now, we have nobody applying for these. I don't think anyone knows.
That's all well and good. But meanwhile, you still need to finance the operation of the city.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't want us to advertise this
No,
stuff, that's
I'm
fair.
not, I'm not suggesting you don't advertise. I'm just saying if it gets to the point where you can't pay the bills because there are so many exemptions out there, you could have a potential problem.
That's why it's up to you.
This one, the taxes do eventually get paid. It just takes,
For the deferrals, yes.
right, until the, 3 years goes up and the taxes.
Well, that's on, as you were saying, on one exemption, this other exemption, if it's indefinite, I mean, somebody takes the exemption every year and they live for 30 more years.
It can only go up to half the value. And actually, that's a problem, because if that happens, if they hit that 50% before, like while they're still in the house, then I think it all comes due.
It all comes due.
Yeah.
So that's important. I mean, that's a long time still. I mean, if we're talking a $300,000 home and you defer your $6,000 in taxes, you're still looking at, what, 17 years or so, 16 years before you reach the 150 grand mark of your house. And if your valuation is going up, which it most definitely will, it's not going to go down, I don't think. It's going to keep raising that threshold, right?
So you guys are both correct. So if we lower the interest rate, you'll get less money in the end. And the more people take this thing, it'll be a lot more time before the city gets the money.
Right.
So those are both, and if you lower the senior exemption, the 41D that we have from a qualifying age of 67 to 65, And there's a few more. We have a whole presentation with these options and we have some estimates on how much it'll cost. But I just wanted to bring up that when people come to ask the assessor, we really want to try and give them options and tell them whatever we can. And so I just wanted to point out that some of the things we're telling them or not telling them are actually based on decisions that you guys get to make.
I think it would be important to, and I'm sure you probably do, but important to also make sure that these folks know that it sounds good to them. I mean, anytime you're like, hey, I can get an exemption, I can defer paying my taxes, great. But what, and just making very clear the payback of that will come on the sale of the house. So what is that? So what does that mean for like their beneficiaries?
Yeah, they'll get squat.
Right, they'll get squat. And so that's
That's
very
right.
important to know that, for them to know that, okay, well, yeah, that's the house of my 4 kids. Not to say you should be banking on, you know, your parent dying or something, but if they're thinking they're getting 75 grand, right, when it all comes, at least, because that's the, you know, the valuation or whatever, maybe even more with the sale, that gets taken off the top first. It's essentially like having a mortgage left over, right? It's like a reverse mortgage.
All true. Again, we want to try and show you all exactly what you're, just like with the split tax, the residential exemptions, we want to lay out all the political options you have because you're our representatives and we would like you to be able to make the decisions that are best for the city.
Yeah, it's an awareness thing that we're trying to do really is it's something that's not widely publicized, but it is an option that's out there. Obviously, it's not appropriate in every situation. And there's a qualification process that goes before the board for that also to determine exactly what's going to happen. And so we have been working on a policy, a written policy, so that we can show that we are treating everyone the same way. And, you know, part of what we're trying to accomplish too at this meeting and why I think Chuck is bringing up this point is because it is something that's out there that's available, but it's not something that's widely publicized. And so we're trying to do awareness. And so we were also talking about the other public outreach. And Jim, can you just say something quickly about the thing that we're doing at GCC?
Yeah, we're going to be running 2 programs there in person. And one of them, I'm trying to remember, one of them is like early in the afternoon, and the other one is 2 weeks later, late in the afternoon, early evening, so that people can take their choice.
And do we know when that's going to take
Accommodate
place?
different schedules.
Yeah, and it's basically going to be, you know, what do assessors do? How do they do it? What's going on? And I mean, I think there's a misconception about what we do. I think all we do is come up with assessed values. That's what we are statutorily required to do. Anything else, like the data to support this, we're doing it. I mean, we're helping, we're leveraging Randy. But the point is that if we were not doing this, Randy would have to give up some of the statutory stuff. And you really don't want to do that.
Right.
So, you know, what I'm saying is there's the data support that we provide, that the assessing function provides, but the assessor and the assessor office only has one purpose in life, and that is to come up with property assessments. And
Well, it may be a little broader than that, but that's the main thing that we're doing. And our true goal is, yeah, to have those valuations and have them correct.
and consistent.
And when's this going to take place? Do you know dates? Do you have dates?
Yeah, I think October 3rd and 10th or something like that. I'll make sure.
And we've been talking to Matt about promoting them on the website, our website. So that should be available to everyone in the general public pretty soon.
Yeah. And you know, we've been talking to Matt about making this information available on social media, even the Facebook groups that are probably a little less charitable in their view of local government. And
Well
because
Yeah, that's very well put.
Because, whether you agree with them or you don't agree with them, they're entitled to their consideration. And we want to make sure that we make stuff available to them. And if they complain, even after they had the opportunity to be educated, well, we'll remind them of that fact and then we'll educate them.
Very polite.
Right, and so that is our outreach, the stuff that we're doing, but I wanted to move on to some of the other questions. So one of them was tax classification determined by property types and not which areas of zones they were housed in. And so I'm not sure if I'm hitting this on the head, but what I'm seeing in that question is that, when we're establishing our valuations, we're looking at the different neighborhoods and we're slicing and dicing our statistical sales information all these different ways. And so some of them, we're looking at the different property types. We're looking at the style of the building that's on there, the age of it, the grade, which, applies to the condition, and the neighborhood that it's in. So the area of town that it's in is one of those things that is also looked at. And that's so part of our whole valuation process and how we do it includes the areas of town where they are and any influences that might have on their value.
But we're also constrained in how much variance there can be. So pardon?
Stephanie has her hand raised.
We don't take questions during presentations. Just, sorry, Stephanie. We have public comment, but it's not a back and forth.
But just so it's clear
Shoot me an
though,
email the question if you want, Steph.
just so it's clear though, this CIPRO, the state requires that those are the things we're doing. So like the neighborhood stuff and all these other factors that Randy and the software used to value things, you can't split like this neighborhood pays more than this other stuff. We can't do that. The state only allows us to split the rate based on classification. So residential, open space, commercial, industrial, personal property.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm looking at.
But there's valuations, different neighborhoods, that's different.
I'm looking at the ASR template.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
This template, basically presents a lot, same base data sliced different ways. The first slice is, the land use code, what is
Classification.
classification. And then for residential, then you're slicing and dicing it by 4 or 5 other ways. But you have to have this variance has to be within limits, regardless of how you slice it.
Yeah.
And it's the same for condos, right? So even if you're looking at a neighborhood, it really doesn't matter whether you're looking at a neighborhood because all the neighborhoods get considered together and the variation in their valuations has to be within, plus or minus 10%.
Yeah. And our CAMA software, it does all this stuff and it's state certified and we really can't monkey with it.
Yeah.
So would something like let's just say, trying to make it as apples to apples as we can. You got 2 houses on the same street, roughly the same square footage. They got the same lot size because it was subdivided time ago and they're exact. So your land value should be the same, right? I know I've been asked this throughout the years and I've asked it myself, do we still do our valuations? I know we have grades for like the shape the house is in, as far as like, if you do like a full renovation or you do like a siding job, you may get bumped up because, you've made improvements to the house. And I know that those drop kind of quick back into average. It doesn't seem to stay there that long, at least from what I've heard. But so the reason I ask this is, let's say for all intents and purposes, we've got pretty much same houses and stuff, but one place is just kept up better than the other one. Does that person get a higher assessment on their house because they're like landscaping their place or they're, keeping it so it doesn't look as dumpy as maybe a neighbor, like, because I know, so I guess I should just ask, is that still something that we do here? Do
That's
we,
definitely a factor in our valuations. And
Okay.
it depends on how, the access that we get and then the access that we had at the last time. So to
Right.
answer your question, as far as the land value goes, yeah, it should be very close to the same to your neighbors. And
Yeah.
it goes off of, so we have a certain, depending on the zone, you have what we refer to as your building lot. That is, you're in many cases, it's 40,000 square feet that you have to have. There's other parts of town where it's 7,500 and that type of thing.
Right.
But anything after that you have is considered excess land and it's valued much lower. So
Right.
for instance, your 40,000 square foot lot's going to go for $70,000, but every acre after that is going to be $4,000 per acre. And so
Okay,
now the condition wise, yeah, it's up to us, or if someone's out there listening and they know that they haven't done a lot of continuing maintenance and updated things, that's part of why we stress to look at your property record card, because there's a depreciation factor that's applied. And depending on how well it's upkept, is definitely going to affect the market value. And that's what we're trying to capture. So if we know that there are necessary changes or updates that need to happen, then we can go in and adjust the depreciation accordingly. Just like when there's a big renovation done, we're going to adjust the depreciation to show that, okay, no, it's not going to receive the same depreciation as when it was originally built in 1950, because now, we're thinking it's closer to, another standard. And then when they determine what we refer to as an effective year built for the depreciation. So it was built in 1950, but with the renovations that were done in 2020, we're saying that it's really a 1985 depreciation that should be applied. Or, somewhere there's calculations that establish that happy medium.
So
And so,
if I could just, do
go ahead,
you want to
Chuck.
add something, Jim?
No, I actually, I wanted to go back to Mike's example of two houses that were side by side. They're similar in virtually every respect, except one has nice landscaping and the other one is a dump.
All right.
That doesn't come into play in the valuation, does it? We don't talk about the the value of the improved land or, the more presentable land, do we? We're just concerned about the house,
The structure.
the structure. Is that correct, Randy?
Yeah, and there's other factors that, could affect the land value, or that a neighbor would certainly say, hey, this is this eyesore next door. This person who used to work at a small repair place and has 6 abandoned rider mowers and a few snow blowers and that type of thing in the front yard, in the side yard, in the backyard. And they're saying, hey, my land value is getting brought down. Well, it's really sales that would have to establish that. So we couldn't necessarily, we would have to look at it. They could apply for an abatement, and then the assessors would go out and do an inspection and make an evaluation as to whether or not that was we were gonna decrease their land value due to that. But and then with the neighbors also, it would be more difficult, to qualify that, because it would have to be sales. And I've had that situation happen. The neighbor was very upset. And, I think eventually when the house sold, it happened to have some extra land. And so they got extra lots out of it. So the market couldn't bear it out. So it could have truly been some type of influence, but those things are more different or difficult to quantify. And usually it would be a board decision, if it came down to it, where someone was contesting the value on that, for that reason.
A little richness there. So I had the opportunity, thank you guys for paying for me to go to Assessor Course 200 last month. And what Randy's talking, so what Randy's talking about, there's a very extensive section on field work. And you can't just sort of say anything. It's actually extremely detailed on the things you take into account and how you do it. And even though I took the course, I couldn't do it. And that's why Randy is the person in this town who has the experience to do that. And it's very important. One of the things we talk about in the boardings all the time, the most important thing we can do is be consistent. And that's why it's really terrific the way this administration got us an assistant, or promoted a clerk to an assistant assessor, and now we have a clerk as well. Because if Randy's not in the office doing clerk stuff, he's out inspecting. And when seniors come to my ask session, we look at the record card and we look at the condition and the depreciation. And almost always they say, yeah, that's right. And they look at their neighbors, say, yeah, that's right. But it's really important that if they don't think it's right, that they can have Randy come out there and look at it.
Sure.
And it's really important that we have Randy able to go out and look at as many houses as we can. And it's also important that if anybody has an issue, they should ask. And if we are sending out questionnaires and whatever, if people, it's to people's benefit to have Randy come out and look at the house. It's to your benefit. It will be the most fair if Randy gets to look at it. And we're a small enough town that we can have one guy to be perfectly consistent. And now Devin's going to start going out with Randy too and getting trained up. And so we're going to have a little bench depth there. It's really important that it's super consistent and super fair for everyone. And that's what these sessions have asked the assessor about. That's what Randy's talking about here. It's what the CAMA system tries to do. That's what this stuff they taught in this class. It's all about fairness and consistency.
The reason I ask is, the reason I started with that question first is for two reasons. One, I think it's an old, it's something people have talked about for years, and so what you end up getting, I think because of maybe the misconception of this, is either people are leaving their houses, right, kind of dumpy because they don't want to pay higher taxes, or they're not letting you guys in.
Yeah.
So, there's been like, I know plenty of people who have gone into their house and be like, wow, this is amazing in here, but why don't you make your house look nice outside? They're like, well, no, because then my tax will go up. But if I just don't let them into my house, they can't charge me for this glowing chandelier and awesome, perfectly redone oak floors, because they still think I have shag carpet from the 70s that's, 40 years depreciated. And I think on the second part of that is, and I mean, that may be true, because if they are doing great improvements to the inside of the house, they don't want you to know. But the other part is for as a full cycle in the city is permit, is a lot of people won't, they're hoping that you don't see it, right? And that nobody sees what they're doing when they add, an addition off the back of their house that you can't see from the street. And, yeah, I know you guys still do the perimeter and you can check the square footage and things like that. But at the same time, then you don't know what's in there, and.
Randy, you want to say something about
Just
how to handle
if
that?
this knowledge is out there a little bit more, then it might help people to, want to possibly pull more permits when they're appropriate, and that, being a collection for the city as well, and legal. And then the other is to maybe that would have them invest more in their property, even without thinking that if I do something outside, all of a sudden my taxes are going to go up, 20.
Michael, one of the problems we have is that there's a perverse incentive in the permitting office.
Right.
So, right, if you have your contractor accurately estimate versus underestimate, then you pay less fee.
Right. Right. And that's also true. And the other reason I say this is to they may, you see a lot of folks, they'll do improvements on their house right before they go sell it, right? Because they want the highest sale value they want, but don't want to pay taxes on it. I don't know why people would do that, because I wouldn't want to live there. Like, if you're going to do all that improvement, you might as well stay.
But a lot of people do that,
Right.
and then you find out about it when they sell.
Right.
Randy, you want to say something about how you handle people who won't let you into their houses?
Well,
And
there
how
were a
we
few
set
things,
value?
there were a few things I wanted to comment on. One of them is that we're just trying to be fair. And so if there's people out there that are listening and they have finished over their basement, they're being unfair to all their neighbors, because they're hiding the value that they have. And so, yeah, we're trying to keep it as accurate as possible, but we can only find out if we get in. And so if we don't get in and someone is very adamant about it, or we know that something's happened, yeah, there's an addition, but they're not letting us in now. to see what's going on, we have to estimate. And so in some cases, I call it the circle of assessing. If we estimate, then we're going to estimate on the high end. Or we're going to, depending on the circumstances, we might assume that there's more going on there than really is. And so we estimate high. And then the person gets their new tax bill and they see how high their value has gone, and then they apply for an abatement. And when they apply for an abatement, they have to let us in. And so that's why I sort of call it a circle. And so I'd rather know right away than have to go through or make an assumption or try and blackmail somebody even into letting me into their house by, inflating their value falsely, And so we sent out our questionnaires, and I even had one response from someone that was just adamant, and you are not coming into my house. And if there's a change in my value, I will tell you what the value change is and tell you, and it's like, I'm sorry that you don't understand, how it works, but it's advantageous to understand what your property record card is. It has all the data that's making up your valuation. My board members and I go over it with people because what I say to people on the phone often is that the property record card tells me a story about your house. And so when I go over and look at the different conditional elements and whether their bathroom has been upgraded in kitchens, I tell them the story. And when the story that I'm hearing from them about the condition of their house is radically different than the story that I'm seeing from the data on my property record card, that's when I am suggesting that I do an inspection. And so most of the time you're doing an inspection and lowering the value in cases like that. But, it's up to us to stay on top of that permit process. We talked about, I am not the only one. We still have RRG with us. We're paying them a lot of money to help us. And my goal as being hired as the chief assessor was to move away from outside assessment. And so, yes, we have been fortunate enough to get the support of the mayor to increase our staff and work away, or what we're trying to do is become less dependent on the consultant. I think that we still need to have a relationship with them for some of their expertise that they have that I don't have. But certainly right now, I think also that we've been paying them to be part of our staff. And I think that we are better off having our own qualified, trained personnel in-house as opposed to having to outsource to get qualified and trained personnel.
Oh, sorry, go.
I was just wondering, how often are you going out to any given house? So like, I don't know if there's how many year cycle that you're like, okay, we saw that one.
So
Last year.
the state requires a 10-year.
Every 10 years, the DOR requires us to go out to what we call a cyclical review of every property. And so, yes, if people they put that addition on their backyard that we can't see from the road, during the cyclical review, we should see that. And so it's not always, us getting into the backyard with technology now. Some of the data collection that was done for our recent efforts was done virtually and with, a flyover and satellite photos and that type of thing. And so when you identify something that needs a closer look, well, then that's when you send your person out. But yeah, anything like that, because I've seen that type of thing as I'm out in the field in a data collector capacity. It's no longer a deck that's off the back, but now there's an enclosed porch, and that's off of the now living area that used to be the deck. And then there's a deck off of that, And so, you have to keep up and do your due diligence and get out to every inspection. I recently, saw in the permit system something that I knew and had done an inspection on. But when I looked at the permits, there was only, I knew that the house was gutted, but there were only permits for new windows. And so, you never know what you're going to find. And it just makes me, want to rethink my standard of what I'm going to go see, because a lot of times if it's a new roof, I'm not going out to that house to inspect the new roof. Either the house has a roof or not. And I'm not anticipating that there's been a lot of other renovation done. It's just a roof. But and Windows, I might think the same thing about Windows, but now maybe I'm rethinking, or just that's the luxury of having us do it in-house, is that we can get out to more of these places and just double check things and not have things fall through the cracks. and for years when we're relying on consultants, they're great to get us by, but I can't say for sure because I have found things that haven't been recorded. And, we just want to make sure that it's getting done as well as it can be. And, having it done in-house and having our own qualified personnel here doing the job, I think it puts Greenfield in the best position to succeed. And really, the assessor's office is too important of a department, in my opinion, to be understaffed and to not have all of the responsibilities of the office being covered.
In addition, we do post-sale inspections too, don't we?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing right now is reviewing
addition-
every sale from last year and trying to make sure that all of the data and all of those properties is accurate according to what was going on or what was currently there. And, the difference is the market. And so I want everything to be as accurate as possible so that I'm only capturing changes that need to happen because of the market. And so I've been, that's another thing. When we have adequate staff that we're going to have going, we'll be sending out sales questionnaires and we'll be doing timely inspections of every sale because sometimes, even though you have the opportunity to see multiple pictures on the internet, there's things that you just can't tell until you're there. And so, that all has to do with fine tuning our sales and making sure that they're as accurate as possible so that any adjustments that we're making are right on the nose as opposed to arbitrary. And that's another thing that we're doing is trying to expand like what we did with the condos and the two families last year. We're not getting sufficient enough movement in any condo complex or sales in any one given year. And so we're looking at a larger range. We're looking at a 5 or 10-year trend. And I think there's a couple other ways that we examine the properties that we need to expand that and take a longer look back just to make sure that there's not a trend that's happening that we haven't identified yet.
Now you use, I'm sorry,
No, that's okay.
take advantage of websites like Zillow and these other real estate websites.
Hey.
Right? Randy?
Yeah, they have, Zillow, Trulia, the more popular ones. I'm not so, they're getting better, but they have a lot of algorithms and averages that they do everything, and they don't have the local information and local
Well,
knowledge.
what I mean to say is if it lists, okay, the house recently renovated,
Oh, yeah,
garage,
exactly. On the
yeah,
listing,
yeah.
so right after it's sold, all I have to do is Google the address. So you Google the address and there's certain websites that have better pictures and more information. So they can tell me exactly when it went in the market and I can see how long. And so I can tell you that 2 months has been up, pretty much a long time for a house to be on the market, according to the sales that I was looking at. And all the other factors too. So utilities, how many bathrooms there are, there's specific information. And especially like you're saying, Michael, in the listing, oh, this beautiful, they're bragging about the different updates and the special features, that have happened to the house. The boiler was just, updated. And, we have it as it's now a gas boiler and we have it as oil or something like that. Those are all the different specific details that I'm checking with that. With the website. And like I said, certain ones give you better pictures and more pictures than others. Sometimes it just gives you one depending on who it is. So yeah, I'm using that to review all of the sales in-house. And like I said, I'd like to have the opportunity to be able to drive around town and look at them all too, because sometimes there's things that you just can't tell, but from a picture. And even sometimes when you're, an inspection, if you get the opportunity, after seeing the pictures, there's some things that, wow, it looks different when you're in person. And so, that's our goal or part of what we're trying to accomplish, to make sure that our data is accurate so that any changes that it is telling us, like sales data is telling us have to happen to make our numbers work, are true market adjustments that are, right on the money and not, so our data is as good as possible when we're making those evaluations.
So I have a quick question that probably, I think I know the answer to, but the permitting process, the perverse incentive structure you mentioned, where you basically get punished financially if you have an honest assessment of renovation. Is that set by state law? Or is that something we do here locally?
I think our permits are set.
By
I
the
think
state?
town by town has
Town by town?
rates. I'm not positive of that, but I'm pretty sure just from pulling permits in different municipalities, they have different rates. Some would be like a flat fee up until $40,000 and then it's, you know, such and such every 1,000 after that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
That's
also-
probably set by each individual town. They have their own way of
Okay.
doing it.
So we could potentially have some control over that aspect of it.
Yeah, that would be great,
Yeah,
because,
yeah, but that's a building inspector question. So
Yeah.
that's really something we should discuss with Mark Snow. Because
So we-
there could be other factors that are, you know, and why it's set up that way that we're not aware of. But it's definitely, there's a significance to what Charles is saying, that perverse incentive. And it's something that I kind of have thought over the years too, but you know, at the same time, we're not the experts. So I'd rather have Mark chiming in about that and see what he says.
The biggest,
Um,
I'm sorry, the biggest perverse incentive is improving your property and having to pay high taxes.
Right. Well, that's what I was wondering, is it almost like a TIF, right? And I'm not in support of TIFs as they are anyway right now, but that's the other reason why I ask is I've talked with some people before about the idea of getting some sort of, if you want your area, your municipality to look better, you are kind of de-incentivizing people to make any improvements to it if they're going to get nailed not only on the permitting, they're going to get nailed on their taxes going up. Is there any, I don't know if the DOR allows this, but is there, have you guys ever heard of, like, let's say someone wants to do $50,000 worth of improvement and that would, effectively raise their assessment by, let's say, 75,000, and they're only doing $50,000 worth of work. Is there a way to, by incentivizing people, is for that build, that improvement to it, is to knock down that portion to a lesser rate?
I just like to, and Randy, correct me if I'm wrong on this. This is something I just got from that class.
Mhm.
Generally, things that are so-called maintenance do not increase your value.
Okay.
So like Randy said, if you replace your roof got old and messed up and now you replaced it, that should not change the value of your home.
Okay.
If you replace your windows, it should not change the value of your home.
Okay.
If you mow your lawn, it's
Right.
maintenance. It's not increasing the value of your home.
Okay.
The main thing that's supposed to increase the value of your home is if you add to it.
Or change what's in it?
If you upgrade substantially, like, for example, let's say you change from an oil heating system to a heat pump heating system, right? That could change the value of your home because you changed your property record card.
Right.
But if you're doing things that don't change your property record card, generally that doesn't do it unless, Randy, would you say like if you changed like a lot of things, so it changed your entire condition, that maybe that might do it. But generally, just upkeeping your house should not increase your value. Is that right, Randy?
Yeah, that is, an example of where upkeep, depending on the age of the house. So it's built in 1907 and you're taking out all the plaster and it's all drywall now. And that's more of a, something that, through the permitting process, then we're going to be, assigning, like I said, that effective year built to your depreciation so that it's not going to receive the same depreciation as a house built in 1907, but because now really some updating's been done and it's not a true, everything is not original from 1907.
Right. But if you had drywall and it was just yucky and now you floated it and painted it, that's still drywall.
Right. So I think that's important. I mean, if to add to the sessions, info sessions, if you could, is because I think that's a big stigma out there that people think, myself included.
Yeah.
So you just don't.
I had
That, exactly. And I get what you're saying. It's, if people are more familiar with their property record card, like that shows up on there. The type of roof you have, like if you have slate and then you change to asphalt, right? That would change effectively the value, even though it's just a roof.
Well, it might make it go down.
Right.
I mean,
And then like same thing, you're changing from like wood clapboard siding to vinyl. Now all of a sudden you've changed something that's on your property card, so you're gonna get assessed differently. It's not just replacing wood for wood.
Right, because that material has a certain cost value in our tables. and so did the slate, and so does the asphalt. So those different things, it might, it may or may not. I don't think, going from carpet to hardwood, it's not going to be a huge value changer. It's going to affect it by a few thousand, but it's not like a $20,000 or $30,000 difference.
I think that would just be good information, kind of like, even if on your website or something, like a quick, like, I think that that's a Q&A kind of thing that a lot of people have that presumption. Just from, how it's always been, that's what they perceive it as. And it's good to know it's not that way. And I think that is a good point to alert residents to, because then having that information, they may be maybe more willing to, fill out that permit correctly or, do improvements on their home without thinking that they're all of a sudden going to get a higher tax bill.
That's interesting because I've never thought about that. I just don't want a crappy looking house, like,
Me neither.
You're not a scammer.
Well, but there are some people that are under financial duress. They can't afford to do
Sure.
it as much as they'd like to.
You can't afford your tax bill, you can't afford to improve your house.
I know we have, and I know we want to get back to the list of questions. But I just want to just put something to hang out in the air. We've been hearing a lot of people talk about value. And it's very strange, at least for me, it's been very strange that I have two ears. And in one ear, I hear people saying, they look at their record card and they're saying, I want you to decrease my value because I'm paying too much taxes. In the other ear, I hear people saying, my neighbor's doing yakety yak and that's hurting the value of my house.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, if your neighbor puts those wrecked lawnmowers in your yard, that's awesome. Your taxes will go down. Why are you talking? It seems like the thing that matters is, when do you plan on selling? If you're going to sell next year, you want your value to go way up. If you're not going to sell for 20 years, hey man, you want that thing to be terrible. So it's just, when you talk to your constituents, you got to have both ears and try and help them, because people have this knee jerk, right? Depending on the conversation, oh no, I want my value to be high. And then a different conversation, oh no, I want it to be low. Honestly, the best thing is, let's just make it right.
Well,
Let's just make it
you want
fair and
the
right.
real estate people to say your value is high, but we want the city to say it's low.
But people
Right.
what they think is best for them.
These Zillows and
Exactly.
stuff,
The people.
the base of where Zillow and MLS and Realtor.com and Redfin, the base of where they get all their information is the city assessment information. That's the basis of it.
The
So
public record.
Yeah.
That's what we're the public record.
Good. It's a real tricky situation where we have a commodity that also is necessary to stay alive, Like that's a tough spot to be in a society. But
And so
that's
we're
fine.
tasked with just trying to be fair, and that's what we're asking everyone else to do, is to be fair about it. So, moving on, another question is, formulas other than residential and commercial sales market used to determine values of property.
I think we just talked about that a lot.
Yeah, and so there's three approaches to value: the sales, the cost, and income approach. And so the sales in the market is what's driving most of the residential. The cost approach is applicable in residential, commercial, and industrial. And income is applied more often in a commercial, because there's really no income, to be had. I mean, it might have an influence on multifamily properties. But,
When you say cost, do you mean cost of improvements to the property? Is that what that phrase means?
well, in replacement cost new, less depreciation is what I'm talking about. Replacement cost new, less the depreciation. That's the world where we live in as assessors.
Thank you.
And so those are the different approaches to value that we're using, and all of them together in some capacity to determine our values. And so then next we have a vacancy tax for unused commercial properties, including office space and storage units. And so I do remember this coming up, but is this really a question or a request for additional information? And so that's why I was saying, like, some of the stuff really, this for instance has no bearing on the classification.
Well, you know, we talked about this briefly last meeting and there are pros and cons to it, which was on your presentation.
But yeah, I only did that for residential.
Right.
But for commercial, I didn't research it. But the point, we talked about this actually extensively in our meeting this morning.
Okay.
And the first message that we want to provide is this is not a classification or assessment question at all.
Right.
This is a political economic question. And we would like to support your analysis with facts that we have. Like we could say, here's the list of all the commercial properties. But that doesn't mean we even know which ones. We might know if we've done an income analysis, we might know whether they're being rented or not, or that the landlord might just have given us, this is our standard rental, but we don't know. We don't have a rental registry. We don't know if people are in there or not. And this question of, should you do a vacancy tax? We have, I don't know what we were supposed to, we don't know.
Okay.
We can provide you with some additional data if you can give us some towns where of an example where they have it. And
Yeah,
then
I've been doing a little bit of research on that and, you know, again, it is a political question and this might not be the appropriate place to talk
More of
about
an
it.
economic development.
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, but some of it's
Legal
pretty
question,
obvious.
yeah.
All you gotta do is look at Main Street.
Well, that
You know,
what we
hey.
could do to, again, to the extent that we want to use the resource of the office is we can give you lists of properties. Say, here's all the commercial properties that we know of. Here's how many units they have.
We know that.
Here's, if we know it, here's the valuation we have for each one. I mean, that's the kind of thing you can get out of it. In fact, I mean, that database is on the website. You can go download it yourself and sort it, and there it is. That's the kind of thing where if we have the extra resource beyond our statutory requirement, we would like to be able to support you guys with data so that then you guys can figure out economics and decide if you want to do things.
This is similar to the work that was done on pilots. I mean, you can do some research to see what cities do pilots. You could do some research on, are there such things as vacancy taxes?
There are some cities that do it.
Well, then we can find out what they are.
That's what I was saying. Give us an example and then we can do some research or possibly even contact the assessing office and find out if there's any additional information we can get behind why they did it and how it's working. So yeah, if you wanted to give us a couple of towns, then we'll try and provide you with some additional information in the future, which you can present, or we could present at that time, or give it to you to present to the committee and Ways and Means, and therefore, the council eventually.
But I want to caution you though. It's always fine to ask Jim and I to do this kind of stuff because we are volunteers, and the extent we have time, we'll be happy to do it. But please take care with asking Randy too much of this stuff, because I don't know about you, but I want him out looking at people's houses. I want him out looking at commercial properties. I don't want him, doing web research that Jim or I could be doing.
Well, thank you both for
Makes
doing
sense.
that.
Yeah.
In your capacity as human beings, like I know this is more than.
But this is the other caution we have. We are a weird board.
Awesome. We love you for it.
Yeah, but our terms are going to expire.
Yeah.
Okay, and whoever could be elected into our spot,
Right.
and you won't get this support maybe with your next board members. I mean, it's always important to vet when you're voting for people, try and vote for people who are going to give the city free work. That's a great idea. But you might not.
Campaign? Do we get?
I got 4 more years. I don't have to campaign. But
We get paid just like you, $2,000.
yeah, so, but
That much?
yeah, but the point.
181.33 a month.
The point is though, it is important. I think everybody as a resident, I want you guys to make good economic and political and policy decisions. I want you guys to have that data and do that. Just be careful. The same thing with like Mark Snow and the permitting and stuff. It's great to ask Mark, give me a list of all of X. But let's try not to lean on city offices to, so that they don't do the things we really want them to do.
Well, I appreciate that, Chuck. And let me just say that, yeah, these two board members that we have here are incredibly more active than any other board members and looking to help than I've ever had in the past. I've had other really good board members, but none that were, wanted to get down in the trenches with me like these guys do. And they've really, I'm learning as time goes by to hit them up more and more often for what they can do to help me, because they've really been a great resource. And you don't always get that and that expertise that they are bringing to the table with their past experience too. So I guess let me just talk them up while I have the opportunity. So then we were
Get us a
getting-
raise.
getting further
right
on
on the subway.
So
Oh, the personal property, yeah.
yeah, personal property, the response from commercial properties regarding personal property evaluations. So we have had some, and it was, a lot of people, complaining, a couple positive responses, but a lot of people, I think, that really just didn't know and had probably been flying under the radar that were complaining about it and realizing that it's a thing that they have to deal with now. And so we really, we don't have as much information about the results as we want. We have the company that did it for us. They have completed the inspection process, but now they're moving on to data entry. And once that's complete, they're going to have some more results for us, and we'll be able to give you a little bit more information. But for the most part, it was a necessary evil, something that needed to be done. As I stated before, our goal is to try and be fair. And that was a situation where, it was lopsided for fairness, and it just wasn't attaining the goals that I have for the city of Greenfield and our standards.
Has there been a substantial, or will there be a substantial increase in new growth on account of this? That
Personal property.
yeah,
Hope so.
well, yeah.
And we don't know
I mean,
how
do you see
significant that
Do
will
you see
be.
that already
One of the things
developing?
one of the things I made as a recommendation when I was stating that we should do this is that usually, yeah, it'll take between $40,000 and $60,000 to complete, and we'll get more than that in new growth. So it's going to pay for itself at least. I could tell you stories of other people that I've talked to where, there was significant amounts of new growth. I don't want to overpromise, but I'm hoping for the best because we need all the new growth that we can get. And we put in the budget a little bit more than we're coming out with right now, or we're doing our best to find every little bit of new growth that we can get to, help spread everything out and keep our tax rate as low as possible.
You're reminding me though, I just want to put in a little advertisement. So we have a new thing this year called our tip line. And this applies both to the valuations of residential that we talked about, as well as this commercial personal property. And we'll be advertising this on our website as well. But we would encourage anyone who thinks there is a business or residential that maybe we don't know about, like maybe we don't know about a business or we don't know about someone's addition on their house or something. We welcome, just like the building department does today already, we welcome any anonymous tips from anyone. Just totally, you don't have to say who you are or anything. Just say, here's the address. Here's what I saw. And when you guys get a chance, put this on your list so you check it out.
Maybe throw that up on the fire department sign as you come in town. I mean, I'm sort of tongue in cheek. But,
There's gonna be some use.
the fire department sign on the way into town, they got a brand new shiny LED sign. It could be a great spot for that message.
Yeah, and to be
Right
fair,
on your neighbor.
That's
Be
what I was
fair.
thinking when as soon as you said, I was like,
and I talked to Mark Snow about this too. As we were just talking, we have a very limited resource in Randy and Mark Snow, our experts. And so, we don't want everybody just saying their neighbor just to do it, because that'll take away from the important actual fair stuff. But if you really think that there's something that we don't know about, you are welcome to provide us an anonymous tip and put it on our list, and we will get to it. And that is entirely legitimate to do that.
All you gotta do is email.
Yeah, and we won't use your email address. We won't even record it.
It won't be anonymous to us, but
Yeah, well, but we already have that, like with abatement applications and stuff. So we have private information that we don't give out. And so these will be anonymous tips. And again, if you think it's worth the city spending the resource to look at something, then we believe you.
Yeah, and we're doing it for one reason, to be fair. So it's not fair to have someone, building something and having some luxury that they're not paying for it. I don't want to assess anyone for anything that they don't have, but I don't want to not assess anyone for something that they do have. So that's our goal, is just to try and be fair. And if that's something that's going to help us, then we're trying to talk about it. And so the next item is restriction on properties purchased by nonprofit organizations. Again, it doesn't really have anything to do with classification, but this is more of a political thing that's kind of coming up, and we're going to be accumulating and putting out some additional information on this. So
Again, we can't stop any nonprofit from buying a house. But what we can do is nonprofits are supposed to file a 3ABC form with us. And most people don't know this, but just because an organization is registered as a nonprofit federally or whatever, that's not enough for them to get the exemption from us. They have to have a mission that's for the public good. So it's not enough, for example, if they provide affordable housing. It has to be for the public, for everyone.
Well, for instance, if it's, they claim it's an educational facility, in reality, it's not. And I know this is.
That should come out in their form. And
Well, it'll be on their 990, so the 990 is gonna list all of their activities, programs, so. But I think one of the issues is things that on certain forms are considered educational is a big catch-all. And because there aren't other buckets, so you end up saying educational.
Well, so being a 501c3 is not sufficient to be tax exempt. You need to be operating as a public charity that benefits the public at large and not just a select group of individuals. And it's up to the board to determine whether or not you are taxable or not, whether you qualify to be exempt.
And do those get reviewed on a normal basis, like annually or?
In theory, that's supposed to be happening. That's one of the things that I think I have identified that I don't really think was happening. And you mentioned 990s, and there's certain paperwork that we're supposed to have on file for all of these exempt organizations. And I can't find it here in the city of Greenfield. And I asked the previous administration, and they weren't able to lead me to it. So that's another thing that we're going to be doing, is establishing that, going over all of the nonprofits or any exempt property in town and making sure that we have all of the qualifying paperwork on file, because we're supposed to have that.
Essentially recertifying
articles of incorporation, mission statement, officers, listing of the officers of the organization and that type of thing. So yeah, that's an overhaul and something, again, with an understaffed assessor's office that you don't have the time to do. It's on us to go out. We should be visiting every tax exempt property to make sure that it's not being leased to some for-profit entity, and yet it's not being taxed, and we've had examples of that and caught it since I've been here. But really something that needs to be done every year, that you need to have sufficient staff and you need to be processing all your paperwork on time and making sure that you're adhering to those standards of the state and what we're establishing in the city of Greenfield as the standards of the assessor's office.
Yeah, and there's a perfect example of that they taught us in the class. If you have a church, so the pastor, his house is exempt because he provides to everybody. But then if they lease another house that they own to someone else as like an affordable thing, that's not exempt. Even though the church is a legit, we exempt the church, but that part of their property, if it's leased to somebody and it's not a public good, that part gets taxed. So if there are nonprofits that are buying houses all over town unless every single one of those houses is like open to the public, then we get to tax it.
But only that portion of that nonprofit.
Mhm.
Just that
If
property.
it's, or say, for
Completing-
instance, the church is leasing their parking lot for a school district to park their buses.
That a for-profit business under the nonprofit church, right? That's the question.
Right. That is a-
Right, and so we'd
good
want to know
question.
about the income, which has been disclosed to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, so for instance, I can give you another example. It's a church, but they run a daycare out of a certain portion of the church. Well, the daycare is for profit, and then that would make that part of the church taxable. But then that's also a precedence that's set in your community and something that it's up to your board to be making the decision on. So,
Mhm.
let's see, the next thing we have is existence of residential homes designated as Airbnbs in Greenfield. And actually, the next one kind of ties in, establishment of a rental registry in Greenfield. And so those two are kind of have to do with the same thing. Again, not a classification thing, but something where Chuck did put some work in as far as trying to establish a rental registry. And we've been talking to others about it too, because it's not really maybe the most appropriate location for the assessor's office to be the one that's maintaining a rental registry, a list of that. It's really, I think, maybe more appropriate or has been more closely monitored by the Board of Health. And so, it'd be great to have that. And if we can establish that, that's great. But it's not something that the assessor's office would, while we would be willing to help, would not be, in a position to maintain.
When I just do a search for Airbnbs, Greenfield, there really aren't.
They're not many.
No. So
There
it
are a
might not be
few.
worth going down that, we could, other towns add extra taxes on it.
But to the point, and I've been talking to, this is something that's going through my email a lot. There are a lot of other reasons beyond tax assessment. Mainly health, tenants' rights. There's a lot of reasons to have one in the city. And that's actually between a council and the administration, because there are costs maintaining it and so forth. But yeah, again, just like these other things, the assessor's office has a database, which does not contain, unfortunately, the unit number for every apartment. In fact, as far as I can tell, nowhere in the city is there the unit number of every apartment. But we do have multi-unit information in our database, which we would like to validate. And I found out that the building inspector knows which buildings are, or they think they know which buildings are multifamily. And then the clerk, when they do the census, people say, I live at unit 2B. And the fire department, if you go there and register, you can, say, hey, I'm in apartment 2B. So there's like these different silos of information.
It's like these systems need to talk to each other or
Well,
figure out how to.
Right, but unfortunately, that might cost money.
Right.
So,
It's almost a quick like cost benefit. And now it's like, how much is your time worth?
Right.
One of those kind of questions, like, if we do figure this all out and then we end up seeing, okay, well, like you said, there's not many, let's say there's 8 Airbnbs in Greenfield. How much time and money did we spend to get there? And then we're like, oh, okay, we can assess an extra like small tax on them. Is it ever going to pay for itself, or did we just?
but again,
It's
maybe
useful to have a good rental
Right,
registry.
for health
database.
and safety, I mean, I would love it if the fire department knew the address, the apartment number of every place where people lived. I would love it if the health department knew wherever people were there. I mean, for those functions, I think it's beyond money.
Yeah.
It's a thing that might help.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of different departments that would benefit, so the Board of Health, even the assessors, police, and fire. Yeah, there's a benefit that we could all get from that, but who wants to take, you know what I mean? Who wants to take the responsibility of being the one to
Budget.
create and maintain it? And so, it's something that would, it's a great idea and thing that we should have, but exactly how to execute it, I don't know.
I looked at stuff.
We're willing to use our data or supply data, whatever we can. And I've done that for the police department before, even here in Greenfield, to give them an idea. Well, okay, here's all the multifamily homes that I have, the the properties that are classified that way, and then they use that to build off to do, there was some landlord education or incentive things that they were trying to do. So there's a bunch of different uses that we could have for that type of list, but it's just maybe initially creating it, and then who's going to maintain it after that, and who it would be most appropriate for. Because Chuck, yeah, you're right. The clerk's office has information from the census. We have information from the property class, and the Board of Health has, some information. Police and fire also might have their own little piece that they could contribute to an overall, larger sum of great information that we could all tap into. So I think it's a good idea, but I just, I'm not sure exactly how or whom should execute it.
This keeps coming up, and I did some Googling around, and I saw that South Hadley had one that has a self-report census form from the landlord themselves with really high fees if they lie, basically.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me a big deal. It's like $100 a day after like the due process is done with having a hearing and a violation and various notices, like a certified letter sent. So there's obviously administrative costs, but that's the kind of thing you could throw in a revolving fund and just, that be, and it was the Board of Health there as well. So I don't know. I don't want to get too much more into it because then we're starting to litigate, how to do this.
Right. Before we're done with us, the Board of Assessors and that topic, did you guys want us to say anything more about the small business exemption, the affordable housing exemption, the residential exemption, any of those things?
I think, speaking for myself, but it seemed really clear with what you guys presented. And I know it's getting late, so I don't want to go down like a huge rabbit hole, but I think the thing that I'm interested in is the split rate tax. And, you guys presented like every permutation in the world. And I think that is hard for us because it's going to make our heads explode. So, speaking for myself,
And me.
and I think the thing that is helpful for us as a body is if you have a best like recommendation with all of the caveats that you guys don't do those litigating and it's not up to you and all of that,
We do.
that would be helpful.
We do. And Jim, you said it best at the other meeting. We don't think we should do a split rate at all. And the reason is no matter what the split is, there's such an overbalance of residential value to CIP value. No matter what you choose, you're going to have a huge hit to commercial industrial to get very little benefit for residential.
Okay.
That's the problem.
That's what I wanted to hear.
And it's the same thing relative to residential exemption, except you're
Yeah,
doing
that's-
residence, you got.
That one was so
We got it.
close. You
Well, it was even reflected in the chart you showed earlier and the table along with it was looking at like, I think that was like 10 years or something at least. And you can see that it's like 75% of the responsibility roughly.
3-1.
3-1. Right. And that hasn't changed. And I think we even just in years past where we've discussed it, it's always seems to be. And though I appreciate the presentation, and then people can get this information also because it always, as alluded to before, it's always very last minute and kind of crammed into right before setting the tax rate. And then by the time the questions are like that the public brings up any questions, it's already after we've set the rate. And then you got to wait another 10 months, or whatever until it happens again. But it's been resoundingly not now. And until something really changes in our commercial and more, I think, especially our industrial base, it probably, I assume,
Well,
20 years to probably get stuff at the same conversation.
That's where the argument lies, the industrial base.
Right.
And, I'll use perfect example, the former Cerrucci property, by Stop and Shop. Everybody, pushed for that to go back to planned industry, knowing damn well there will never be industry there. And that property is best served going back to trying to get some kind of housing in there. Of course, we have Stop and Shop and the property owners, the heirs, holding this city hostage. I mean, they're not going to develop that property when they get $1.3 million a year from the people across the street saying not to develop it. And,
for another big box store.
or for anything.
Really?
Yeah, I mean.
Thing too?
This is kind of a silly question, but that's income. Could we?
Well,
that's the value of
I've
it?
asked that question to Randy.
Yeah, you did.
But you need two things to tax somebody on, right? Two out of
Two
three.
valuation methods.
Right. And
So even if they were getting an income, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, even if they have an income of 1.3 million, if the replacement cost is zero, and if the valuation of the property, because commercial property is, nobody wants to buy commercial property, if the market value of it, is $100,000, we can't do it just based on the one valuation method. Do I have that
We
right,
do-
Randy?
Right, and so, well, partially. So the land, the market value of industrial land, is basically, it's pretty good where we have the value of that property. But yes, there's an income element of it. And if we wanted to increase the value of the property because we know we have this income, then it's a risk reward situation that we have to figure, well, how much can we raise that value before the owner of this property is gonna say, hey, hold on a second, and apply for an abatement and possibly take us to the appellate tax board. And
Yeah.
so whatever increase that we do, and if the more significant it is, the more we're going to have to build up our overlay in case it doesn't work out. And so that's part of why we have the valuation where it is. And it has been brought up before. And actually, I'll be talking about it again as we get closer to the classification to see exactly, how much value we're going to put there, and the whole risk reward weighing, and figure out whether we're going to try and get more value out of that property because of that known income.
And people do take us to ATB. That is a thing that does happen. I know because we've, as special board members, we have taken a lot of interest in every abatement request. And we really have been just staring at them and really trying very hard. And unfortunately, that's resulted in more ATB cases.
Yeah, this gets into comparables, and people don't know how to do comparables. And you really need to compare what's on the property record card in this thing called the calc ladder. It doesn't.
It's the formula we were talking about.
These are the variables that go into the formula. And people think, well, he's got a house that looks like mine, and, and we're neighbors, and, we're really kind of the same. Well, you're not. I hate to tell you. I mean, you got to be real identical. And there were five factors that we looked at that, you can use as a measure of comparability. And most people don't know about this, and that'll be part of the education too.
Well, let's not get too technical on them tonight.
Wait.
Like we have-
Our heads haven't exploded yet.
Can't tell, it's just going out of this area.
Honestly, I feel like you guys, it's terrific the way that you guys have let us go very deep.
It's appreciated.
Well, appreciate your time too.
We want to
It's
understand.
good. And also because even, again, not huge attendance, but it's something to refer people back to.
People can watch this video.
Exactly.
Over and over again.
Pick their favorite moments.
We do a montage.
Yeah. Highlights,
Yes, find the
Right.
leprechaun, right? Little leprechaun appeared in the background. Did you identify it? We can do a little bit of a giveaway.
This is the part of the meeting I'm gonna watch over and over again.
That's right. There you go.
Right there.
About the leprechaun.
Free inspection by the assessor's office.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do.
Find the leprechaun in your house, invite an assessor in today.
No, I meant in the background of the meeting, but.
I know.
So anyway, if you have any other questions, shoot them over to the assessor's office or any other, and we'll work on the other things that, providing a little bit more data on some of those other questions that weren't necessarily classification, but still, points of interest.
Okay. Well, we appreciate all your work on this. and
Yes, thank you.
Especially, you know, you guys as well, volunteering, above and beyond. So that's great. Don't have anything else for them.
So the Board of Assessors meeting is adjourned.
Yes, okay. Be good or be gone, or be gone or be good.
Enjoy the rest of your ways and means.
Yeah,
Very
thanks
much
a lot.
done. So our next meeting is October 15th, 2024 at 6 PM, right here at City Hall Meeting Room, second floor, and Zoom hybrid unless for some reason it gets posted otherwise. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Right, do a roll call.
You're welcome.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor Wondolowski.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Counselor Mastrotero.
Yes.
Now you know what you got.
Counselor Garrett.
Yes.
And I'll also say yes. We are adjourned at 7:38 PM. Night and good night.